The of operations not only refers to what procedures to perform first in the field of mathematics, it can also refer to what pieces of equipment to use when to use them most efficiently and effectively when it comes to mechanically controlling weeds. Good evening, everyone. I'm Stefan Galens with Practical Farmers of Iowa, and accompanying behind the scenes is Haley Nelson. We are broadcasting live this evening from Matt Miller's family farm near Bristow in Butler County to learn about weed control equipment in organic crop production systems. But before we go any further, like an old black and white movie, we're going to start with the top. This event is a joint effort between Practical Farmers of Iowa and our partner, the Iowa Organic Association. Since 2006, the Iowa Organic Association has led efforts to provide Iowans the information, support, and resources necessary to succeed in the organic industry. This field is sponsored by Pipeline Foods. Pipeline Foods is accelerating the availability and reliability of organic, non-GMO, and regeneratively grown food. We bring transparent, sustainable supply chain solutions to connect the dots for our farming partners and end users of organic grains and ingredients. And by the Rodale Institute Midwest Organic Center. The Rodale Institute Midwest Organic Center is a new organic research and education hub for farmers, researchers, ag professionals, and the public. On-farm technical support is available to assist you in transitioning any portion of your farm to organic production. Also like to go ahead and thank our Level A sponsors. These organizations and companies and individuals are helping provide funding to support our entire slew of virtual field days this summer. We couldn't do it without their support. Also like to thank our Level B sponsors, also helping to support our entire bevy of virtual field days this year. Again, we can't do it without the support of these institutions and organizations, so thank you very, very much. A little bit about Practical Farmers of Iowa. We are a farmer member organization. We go where our farmers tell us to go. We achieve the mission listed here by helping farmers connect and share knowledge in any which way. We're doing this today with a virtual field day. And you can learn more about the many great things we do with our members on our website. Okay, here's how this evening is going. We've got the rest of the hour. Matt is going to divide the session between corn and soybeans. For both crops, he'll show some previously recorded video of weed control passes he's made through the field, and then we'll take live looks at both of the fields. As far as Q&A is concerned, when Matt is finished with the corn portion, we'll take a quick break for some Q&A. Then Matt's going to hop in his truck and head over to his soybean field. We'll show some more videos while he's in transit. And when Matt is finished with his remarks for soybeans and we're done checking out those videos, we'll take a look at that field and then open it up to more general Q&A for the rest of the session. But as we go, please enter any questions you have using the comment box in Facebook. I'll be monitoring the comment box throughout, and then I'll relay the questions to Matt during the two different Q&A sessions. To get acquainted with the comment box, why don't you please go ahead and let us know who you are and where you're from. And finally, we'd really appreciate to hear from you. When we're done, please tell us what you thought about this virtual field day. This is a new thing for us. I'm sure it's new for all of you, and we value your input. So I'll post a link to a survey in the comment box. I'll do that now, just as we get going, and I'll do it again at the end. And just another little quick note, a little further incentive. Anybody who fills out a survey will be entered into a drawing to win a PFI water bottle. So please tell us what you think, and you might win something. Okay. Without further ado, Matt, I am going to hand it over to you. Let's have a great virtual field day.
All right, well, thanks a lot for that welcome, Stefan, and I welcome all of my virtual friends out there to this field day. And I'm excited to do this. This is the first field day that I've hosted with PFI. So today what we're going to do, as Stefan said, is we're going to focus on the early season weed control. And that is something that is just super critical to the success of your organic operation. and we'll talk about this rotary hoe here that I have in the background. But the way this is going to work is, as Stefan said, is I recorded some videos throughout the season. So we're going to take a look back in time and kind of see how the season progressed this last year. We're going to start with corn. And so the first thing we'll view is harrowing the organic corn a few days after planting. And then we'll look at the next tillage operations that happened after that. So let's take a look at those videos. Today is May 16th, it's Saturday, and I'm in this soybean field, organic soybean field, that was planted on Wednesday, May 13th. I normally don't plant soybeans this early, but again, it has been very nice weather here in north central Iowa and unseasonably warm and dry, so we've been able to progress quite quickly with the planting. And soil temperatures, it was quite cold earlier the past week, but since Wednesday we've warmed up into the mid 50s, and these soybeans currently have about a ½ inch root coming off of them. They were planted 1.5 inches, probably more like 1 3/4 inch deep. So that's what I did there, and this is the first pass for weed control afterwards. Now, my seedbed preparation involved leaving this field with corn stalks on it, covering it over the winter months. I didn't use a cover crop. A couple reasons I leave the stalks out with no fall tillage is because it protects the soil from the elements. Also, it leaves those weed seeds from last year's crop on the surface rather than burying them, and when they're on the surface, those weed seeds are exposed to the elements. It also allows the little critters, field mice and this sort of thing, to eat them. And then early in the spring, as things warm up, they can germinate and we can destroy them with tillage rather than protecting them in the soil. So I plowed this probably around May 7th, about a week before I planted. And I don't plow real deep. I go about 5 inches deep with it, and I don't have cover boards on my plow. It does leave the surface having some residue on it, and also when I followed it with 2 passes with the Tiger Mate 200 field cultivator in the rolling basket, it drags up some of the residue too when those field cultivator shanks hit or grab a hold of the stalk, so it does bring some stalks to the surface. Also, you'll notice that Haley. No. Hey, Haley.
Yep, we're having some tech issues. My computer is queuing up the wrong video, so let me get the right video.
Haley.
Yep.
So what do you want me to show something else, or because these videos aren't working?
Matt, why don't we just go straight to the field and show us what's in the field there?
Haley, could you try and show my first picture, Haley? Could you try and show that first picture that I sent to you? it's labeled A3.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just tell you, since these videos are not working, I'm going to turn the right direction, and I'll show you a couple pictures because these pictures worked. What happened basically is I planted this corn on April 27th or 25th, somewhere in there, which is really early, and I had some hesitation about it because you don't do any weed control then. You want to try and kill your weeds before you plant, and there wasn't a flush of weeds to kill, so I was a little bit nervous. And but it was great weather conditions. I mean, we've never seen weather conditions that good before, so I went ahead and planted in late April. And then some of the corn was coming up, and this is what the emergence looked like in part of the field, which is pretty good. After I had planted, I had used my Trefler harrow twice before it emerged, and then it came up. It looked like this. There's a few weeds that you can see, but there was a problem. And let's go to the next picture there, Haley. And so the problem is you can see those corn rows over on the right, they look awesome. But on the left, there's also corn over there. And so depending on which hybrid I had, it was ranging in population from 33,000. I planted at 36, 33,000, all the way down to like 12,000. And so this, I've never had to replant corn before. I've never had this problem. We had some weather that got down to 26 degrees at night. And so I guess that had some effect on it. And that happened right, when it was about half an inch away from spiking through. And part of being an organic farmer is that it takes a lot of mental fortitude. And I was not very pleased with this situation and trying to figure out what am I going to do as far as replanting, where am I going to get the seed, and what am I going to do next for weed control. And it was raining a lot. So I kind of lost focus on my weed control at that point. So let's take a look at the next picture there. And so by the time the soil dried out, this is what the field looked like. There were little tiny weeds, and it was getting really weedy. And you can see the corn that's growing and the corn that isn't growing. And so we'll take a look at the next photo. And so at that point, I went through, this is the cultivator that I use. It's a Hinneker 6000 row crop cultivator. And it has these rotary hoe shields on it. And I went through and row crop cultivated it. Haley, do you think you want to put the video in that's labeled next that shows this cultivator in action?
Let's give it a try, and you tell me
Okay.
if it's not working.
Okay.
Is this the video?
Yep.
Okay.
That's it. So that is the cultivator that I use those rotary hoe shields from soil to flow through, as you could see, and cover up those small weeds that are in the row, but at the same time protect that corn. And I know a lot of people like the Buffalo cultivator. I guess I grew up using a Hinneker cultivator, and that's what I'm used to. So that's what I have. And there's another picture that shows what things look like after that. I think it's like B7 maybe, or A7. Do you see that one, Haley?
I guess we don't have that. I think that's the
Okay.
end of the photos for corn and videos for
Okay,
corn. Matt.
that's the end of the photos for corn. Well, that's okay. So the other thing with that Hinneker cultivator is that it has some ridging wings on it. So if you're familiar with that type of a cultivator, it has ridging wings. And so about a week later after that first pass that you saw the video of, I came through and used the ridging wings to hill up any remaining weeds that were in the cornfield. So now we're going to take a look at the corn that I'm standing in, and oops, we'll turn this around. Yeah, so here's what the cornfield looks like, and you probably, I don't know, way in the distance, you might be able to see where there's a shorter corn that I had to replant. But the weed control, I think, is it's all right. Here it looks awesome. That looks awesome. But then we can go down a little ways, and you know, there's some grass there. We can go across the rows here, and you can see there's a few missing plants here in the row, which is not so great. There's a little bit of grass that escaped. So this is what things look like in this field. I'd say it's acceptable, but you always try and do better. And here it is. Here's one of these places where things are a little bit thinner. And here's a really thin spot. So I do have a few of those because of the emergence problem, but I think you can see kind of out. So for this field day, I'm hoping to be able to concentrate more on the soybean weed control, because that's a lot more difficult than controlling weeds in corn. So are there any questions for me on the corn weed control? Sorry about the videos that were not able to happen.
That's okay, Matt. We do have a few photos here, or a few
Okay.
questions about corn. First one is, do you have a guidance system on your cultivator that was going through the corn?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'll say that I watched Roger and Jacob's field day from several weeks ago, and they had a nice PowerPoint slide and told a lot about their equipment. And I guess I don't have the exact same equipment that they have, but I use the same principles. And so I have the I have Case IH RTX, which is basically their best level of accuracy. And so I plant with that, and then I cultivate with that. And I have a navigator sliding hitch on my cultivator, and I use that to fine tune, because there is some air in the you know, the guidance. And so I use that to correct the errors as the tractor is driving across the field, or the implement drift, as Jacob talked about in his presentation. But
Okay.
but I manually steer that guidance hitch with the hydraulics in the tractor, rather than letting cameras or whiskers do it, because the GPS is fairly accurate, and it's just some small fine tuning that I need to do in order to keep it just where I want it.
Okay, next question, about how close to the row are you targeting with the cultivator and the wheels there, Matt?
Well, I have on my cultivator, I'm just going to run really fast over here. By the way, I'll show you this. This is where, oops, wrong thing. I had to replant, so we're going across, turn my camera around, see? That's that little corn I had to replant. So this has been cultivated one time, and this is on the end row. Somebody buried some trees here. It's not the best soil. It goes that direction too. And you can see it's a lot smaller than my other corn. So I'm not very happy I had to replant. But we will go and take a quick little tour of the cultivator. Turn me around here. I'm going to run over there really fast. And I'll show you what I have. Okay. So the first pass, I have it set up like this. And those are 21-inch sweeps on there. And they leave like 6 inches of space. And you see those rotary hoe shields, how they're in place so they stop clods from knocking over the corn rows that are going right through there. And then the second time, those rotary hoe shields get put up, and I put these ridging wings down, and then it just pushes some extra soil up against the row to cover up any remaining weeds. Any other questions?
Yeah, how do you handle weeds in the row? Not just the interrow, but in the row.
Right. And so, well, first of all, you have to harrow it to get the weeds out before the corn plants emerge. And because I had this problem with the germination, I didn't go and harrow it after the corn came up. And I've not done that before. I tried it with my old harrow, which was a Kovar harrow, and it didn't do a good job, but I have a Trefler harrow now. And there are a lot of people that are using it after the corn came up, but because I was having this germination issue, I was focused on other things and I didn't do that. But as far as in the weeds in the row, is the soil can go through it gets pushed through these spikes in the rotary hoe wheel, and the corn is taller than the weeds are. And so if you can push enough soil through the spikes, it'll cover up the shorter weeds and keep the corn plant standing. And then also with the second pass, these push soil again into the row of corn to cover up the weeds. I also have this rotary hoe, and I like this style because it has one wheel per arm. And Jacob and Roger, they had the John Deere that has 2 wheels per arms, but this one does a lot better in more residue, and if you have some rocks or things, they don't get stuck in there as much. So I use the rotary hoe in the corn sometimes, but more often in soybeans if the ground is crusted.
Okay, Matt, here's another question about here's one about corn planting. Would you, all things considered, would you try planting that early again?
You know, there's something that happens with the corn too, is that when you plant later, I don't know, I was talking to somebody about this, and when you plant later, it seems like the corn elongates faster, and there's more difference between the height of the soybeans, or the height of the corn, and the height of the weeds. And so you're able to cover those weeds better with the later planted corn. And I guess the reason I plant that early too, and I never planted quite that early before, but I always try and push my planting date as early as I can, because we know what the research says is that that's how you maximize the yield. But at the same time, you're going to have more weed pressure, and weeds can hurt your yield a lot. So it's a real balancing act. And I guess I'm not going to say I'm not going to plant that early again. The main thing is that I was disappointed that I had some poor emergence, and it was by hybrid. I showed you pictures of corn that emerged great, and I would just say anybody that is going to plant corn, they need to really consider the early vigor of corn. And if it doesn't come out of the ground really fast and strongly, that's going to hurt your weed control program, because you can't be as aggressive at getting those weeds out, and it's going to hurt you in the end because you won't have as good weed control. So I've always looked for good emerging corn varieties, and I'm just going to not talk about that anymore. because I was not happy. And it's none of the seed companies that sponsor PFI or Iowa Organic Association that were to blame on this one, but we'll just leave it at that.
Okay, Matt, that's a great way to, I think we should segue to soybeans. I think that's a great way to cap the corn discussion and to transition. What do you think?
I think it's great. So do you think that video will work? Because if I need that time to get to the other field, and if not, I'll go to a different field that's a little closer. And so I'll say to all of the viewers, sorry, I'm a bit flustered about this video not working, but what we're about to see is how the season progressed with my organic soybeans. And the field that I had the videos in is a field that is like 14 miles away from the main part of my operation. So this field does not get always the attention that it should, because it's too easy to say, oh, I think it's doing okay, we'll wait till tomorrow. And therefore, it's been the worst field of mine as far as weed control. And I wanted to show you what these tools can do that I have as far as weed control in this field. So it starts at after planting, and so we'll see if that video works. So hopefully it will. And then I'll be back with you in the field.
Hang on while I cue this up.
Today is May 16th, it's Saturday, and I'm in this soybean field, organic soybean field, that was planted on Wednesday, May 13th. I normally don't plant soybeans this early, but again, it has been very nice weather here in north central Iowa and unseasonably warm and dry, so we've been able to progress quite quickly with the planting. And soil temperatures, it was quite cold earlier the past week, but since Wednesday we've warmed up into the mid 50s, and these soybeans currently have about a ½ inch root coming off of them. They were planted 1.5 inches, probably more like 1 3/4 inch deep. So that's what I did there, and this is the first pass for weed control afterwards. Now, my seedbed preparation involved leaving this field with corn stalks on it, covering it over the winter months. I didn't use a cover crop. A couple reasons I leave the stalks out with no fall tillage is because it protects the soil from the elements. Also, it leaves those weed seeds from last year's crop on the surface rather than burying them, and when they're on the surface, those weed seeds are exposed to the elements, and also allows the little critters, field mice and this sort of thing, to eat them. And then early in the spring, as things warm up, they can germinate and we can destroy them with tillage rather than protecting them in the soil. So I plowed this probably around May 7th, about a week before I planted, and I don't plow real deep. I go about 5 inches deep with it, and I don't have cover boards on my plow. it does leave the surface having some residue on it. And also when I followed it with 2 passes with the Tiger Mate 200 field cultivator in the rolling basket, it drags up some of the residue too when those field cultivator shanks hit the, or grab a hold of the stalk, so it does bring some stalks to the surface. Also, you'll notice that I don't make a real fine seed bed. There are some clods in here. I don't like to overtill in the soybeans. I think that that's okay. And part of that too is due to the spring plowing. It does leave things a little bit more cloddy. And so what I'm doing for my weed control pass is I'm using this 66-foot coil tine harrow. Picked it up real cheap off a farm sale. And you know, it's not as nice of a tool as the Trefler harrow that I use on the corn. It has some disadvantages in that you cannot back up into corners, and you know, corners are where there's a lot of weed pressure, so you can't back up with this thing. You can only go forwards. And because of the way it folds, it has these cables to keep the wings in place. But what it does is it just has these tines that are straight, and that way the residue doesn't hook on them as much, especially where there was a dead furrow or where I started out with a new land. There's a few more stalks there. But with the tines being straight, it allows that residue to slide off, and it rides over these little clods too. There is actually some residue here. I was just on a dead furrow area, and there is some residue that is sticking in there, but as we drive along, that will pull through. The other thing that you'll notice about this tool is there are only wheels on the front part of it, and there's really no way to control the depth of this thing. Unlike the Trefler, that has wheels on the front and the back, and you can control the depth. Now with soybeans, having everything so precise is not quite as critical as with a cornfield, and so I guess those are the pluses and minuses of why I use this machine here in the soybeans. The other thing is that it's old and it's always not so dependable. Just recently we had to do a little repair right here. You can see the welding on that hinge, and then we also had to reinforce this tongue area because of stress cracks. It was getting old. So anyway, that is what I'm up to today, and we will see how things look in a few days when these soybeans emerge, and then we will do the next weed control pass. A lot of times I'll do 2 passes with this harrow before the soybeans emerge, but it's going to rain this afternoon, so it's going to be too wet to do a second pass before these soybeans emerge. And you don't want to have the drag go across the field when the soybeans are in that crook stage, because if you break the crook, they're dead. They won't grow. And I'm afraid that with the rain, it's going to be wet for too long until the soybeans are in that crook stage. Today is June 3rd, and we're in this soybean field that was planted on May 13th. I drug it with that coil tine drag on May 15th, 2 days after it was planted, or maybe it was 3 days after it was planted. And then we came back here just 2 days ago and rotary hoed it because we had wet weather since about the 16th of May. And so after it dried off, we came and rotary hoed it. There was a crust. This soil tends to get crust on it, and so we needed to break up that crust. And now we're using the Trefler harrow. So this is what things look like after we rotary hoed, and this is what it looks like now after the Trefler harrow has gone by. We're going to take a real close up here of what the soil and weed conditions are in this field. Obviously, it is foxtail. Giant foxtail is the main weed issue. There are some velvet leaf right here. Yep, velvet leaf. So, like I said, this ground is some soil that it does crust up, and we took a rotary hoe over it, and what happens is this is a wheel track, and it didn't even do anything to these foxtails right in the wheel track. I mean, those are nothing's happened to those. However, outside of the wheel track, there are it is loosened up some more right next to the beans. That's pretty loose, and but it didn't completely pull that foxtail out. It's just hanging on by a thread. And so what the idea is that with this Trefler harrow, it will come by here and scratch right next to the beans, and hopefully either cover that one up or pull him out. We can go over here and take a look on the other side. And again, the same thing is, there was a whole wheel that went right here and a whole wheel that went right here, but we have all this soil that's undisturbed, and foxtail is growing. And so when we come with that harrow, it will, what it's doing is it's scratching, and it's pulling that out, and especially right here next to the beans, it will scratch and pull those out. And hopefully this area that's 6 inches of either side, no wheel tracks have gone in that area, and it will pull these weeds out, and this hard area in the middle will get field row crop cultivated. So here's the harrow coming. And it's just a beautiful machine how that works. The trash is flowing through it. One of the nice features that I really like is it has this adjustment that's hydraulic for the tine. And when we encounter an area of the field that might be a little harder, we can increase the tine there. You can see just by the hydraulic lever we're going up. Or if we come to an area of the field where maybe the beans are getting covered up, we can go and decrease the pressure just by simply touching the hydraulic lever. So here's what it looks like from the back of the tractor. And again, here's what the field looks like after rotary hoeing. So you just need to kind of watch from the tractor what the job it's doing is, and it's not hurting the beans in it. So let's go and put the pressure up a little bit, maybe around 7 there, and you can pick up the speed a little bit too, but it looks like it's doing a nice job. There's a few weeds there, but the main thing is we're getting them, the most of them thinned out so that we can do a good job cultivating. Here's a view from inside the tractor. Again, I don't know if you can see in the video out there, there's kind of what the weed situation looks like. And I'm going about a little over 3 miles an hour. We're covering 24 acres per hour, so that's not a real fast speed, but we're accomplishing a lot. Here's what the view looks like from the back. And what I'm doing is I have the tractor in auto steer mode, and that way I can focus on what things look like out the back. I have it the hydraulic spring tension adjustment set on 7.5. And if I encounter some different soil conditions that need to have that adjusted, I adjust it. But like I said, I'm going about 3.3 miles per hour. Not real fast, but my theory is that you don't damage the beans as much. And if you have a lawnmower that's running half throttle, it doesn't cut grass very good. You speed it up to wide open and it cuts the grass. So I don't want to hurt those beans. The other thing is that with these spring tines, if we're going too fast, they're going to have more tendency to want to ride on top of the soil instead of dig in. So even though this is a slow speed, as you can see, I have a very big machine. It's 60 feet wide, but I can still get a lot done even when we're going at a slow speed. All right, the area that I was in the previous video, I just passed with the Trefler harrow. I had the tension set on 8, which is pretty high because you could see that the soil was hard. And there's what it looks like in front of the harrow. It is pretty grassy, and like I said, it's not uprooted. The grass was not uprooted. And so now we're behind the harrow, and we'll take a close-up of what the harrow is doing. And we can see that these foxtails have been pulled out. They're still in a small clod of dirt, but they're not going to be able to keep growing because they're not going to have any moisture. All of these, now this one here, okay, that's in a loose clod of dirt, but it is breaking those clods up and taking this foxtail out. Now I'm sure that we can find some here that have not been loosened. Those all seem to be loosened. But this is a big difference. Get the shadow out of the way. Okay, so that foxtail might be alive for a little while, but you can imagine when we come back with the row crop cultivator in just a few days, we're almost ready to start getting these trifoliates out. Once those trifoliates are out, it's big enough to row crop cultivate, and with this ground loosened up, and these are going to be slowing down, not growing very good. Now right there, see that? Those are still intact. So the harrow, with one pass in these conditions, they're not going to get 100%. If this was a week ago, these wouldn't be rooted in as good and they might come out, but we had rain, and so you have to work around that. But for the most part, we're getting most of this. And again, well, there's a buttonweed. He's still intact, but this is where a wheel track was, and it's far from the row of beans, so the row crop cultivator will get this. But hopefully what's in the row where the row crop cultivator can't get will be cleaned out. Last quick video here before I finish the field. I was harrowing with as much pressure on as those beans could take without getting pulled out or covered up. And now I have less than a full swath left. I have probably about 50 feet. And so one nice feature with this tine harrow that I really like is over on that side I have it completely folded out, but I'm operating it with one wing up, so that allows me to not be too harsh on the beans, and it works just fine in this position. I always start off my fields with one wing up when I go along the fence, because that way I can kind of stay on the planter tracks with the 16-row planter that I have. And anyway, well, that's all for today. All right, I think I'm back again.
Yep, we got you, Matt. Thanks.
Okay, so here we are in the soybean field that we've been taking a look at, and this is what it looks like today. There are a few weeds. My objective is to spend the least amount of money on hand labor as possible because soybeans, they're as profitable as corn is right now because corn prices have come down so much, but the demand for soybeans is still pretty good and prices are staying firm. But if you have to spend a lot of money on hand weeding, it's going to take away all your profit. Some people I've heard have spent $200, $300, $400 an acre, and that's going to eat up the profit. So you can see that there are a few things we're going to have to hand weed out. We have a volunteer corn plant here. There was a little bit of foxtail that missed right there. And I don't have too many of these, but here is a giant ragweed. There must have been one that went to seed last year because there's a couple there. But you can see that weed control is really excellent. If we take a look under here, there, you know, I'm just picking a random spot. I mean, there's a little foxtail right there, but we'll cultivate this one more time. And this is going to be a good producing soybean field. Unfortunately, it has a little dicamba damage on it. I don't know where that came from. So I think the key is on this weed control for soybeans is that we're looking at lots of different little hammers like Matt Liebman at Iowa State talks about to take the weeds out. And basically I have the 3 different modes of action that I'm using are the harrow, and here's my Trefler harrow. I just brought it out here to the field so that you could see that. The rotary hoe and the row crop cultivator. And I have 2 main row crop cultivators that I use, the Hinneker that you saw for the corn, and then also a Case IH 1820, and it's nothing special about it. It is just a cultivator, but I attribute a lot of my success in the weed control of these soybeans to this harrow. And we had a video of the corn where I explained how it worked, get cut out, but it has these springs on it that control the tension, and that can be adjusted so that it is just the perfect tension for the situation, whether it's the soil type or the height of the crop or what type of weed, how much weed pressure there is. And that allows you to do a real precise job. And, you know, these things are expensive, but hand labor is extremely expensive, and this machine is going to pay for itself quite quickly in the savings on hand labor. And so that's, I hated to spend the kind of money that it takes to get something like that, but it's bad tools end up costing you more than what you realize. And so that's why I try and have good tools on my farm. There is a picture, Haley, if you want to get that ready, why don't you put up that picture that I just sent to you this afternoon, and we'll take a look at that. All right, so here's what this soybean field looked like after it was harrowed with this Trefler harrow and before I row crop cultivated it. And you can see that there's some of the foxtail, you know, they were in loose clods, but it kind of rerooted. And then I came back and I row crop cultivated it, and I hit it one more time with this harrow, and that's how come it looks like it does today. I will row crop cultivate it one more time, and then we'll hand weed it, and we'll be done for the season. There's one more picture, Haley. So a lot of times you think that when you're going across a field with these harrows that you're not doing anything, and there are 2 rows right next to the fence, and I didn't do those because there were some clods, some sod clumps in there. I didn't want to cover up my soybeans, and you can see right to the line what it looked like without being harrowed versus what it looks like being harrowed. And this is right before I cultivated. There are still some weeds in there, but it's all these little passes that everyone makes a difference, and that's how you get a good result in the end. So I guess we're running short on time. I think we're nearing the end, and I want to make sure that any questions that are out there are able to be answered.
Sure, thanks, Matt. We do have a few comments here or questions. There's another one about auto steer and guidance. Do you use auto steer and guidance? I think that's referring to the Treffler. Were you hand
Yeah,
steering that, or is it auto steer?
it is. The Treffler, I use auto steer on it because I have it on my tractor, and what that does is I just let the tractor drive down the rows, and then I watch out the back window, and I adjust the tension of those springs all the time, depending on what kind of soil conditions I have, and also depending on what the weed pressure is. So if I get to the waterway, there's always more weeds in the waterway or on the end rows, I'll drive slower and I'll increase the pressure more to really dig those weeds out. And that way I can just really precisely do a good job everywhere in the field, except for where your chicken manure pile is. That's over in the corner, and that's really tough to deal with after you've had a chicken manure pile out there. And so there are some weeds over there, but other than that, this field looks pretty good.
Okay, great. Question about your estimated yields or your yield goals for both your corn and your soybeans. Can you speak to that?
I guess the general rule of thumb that I would say is that I aim for 15% under what I would get in my conventional fields. And, there's a couple reasons for that. One is the corn is, you don't have seed treatment, and you can see the problem of not all of those seeds coming out of the ground, bad emergence, and you're going to have a little bit of weed pressure. I haven't had 100% perfect weed control in the corn. And I guess the beans, you turn around on those end rows, you smash them down, and so you don't really realize those little things add up. Even though you have, awesome weed control like we're seeing in this field, smashing down your end rows with your tillage passes adds up. And there's also little areas of your field, like I said, your chicken manure pile and your end rows are going to have a little bit more weed pressure, and so you have to average that all out. And so I just figure 15% less than what I would get for conventional yields.
So Matt, what's the latest you'll go to use the Treffler in soybeans? I know that some people, you can run it a little later maybe than other harrows, and the soybeans will flow right through it. How late into the soybean season would you feel comfortable using the Treffler?
Well, I mean, you can see how tall these soybeans are, and these would go through really great yet. And I think it would go through with them even a little bit bigger than this. Once they start to kind of close the row, which these are, I mean, they're not bushing out that much yet, then you probably won't want to use it. But these would work fine yet. But beyond this, that would probably be the limit. And so, this year, I was able to do those tillage passes pretty much when I wanted to, because the weather for the most part cooperated, except after the first harrowing, before the first rotary hoeing. In that time period, we had a little bit of rain and an extended time where I couldn't get into the field. But as an organic farmer, sometimes you run into these situations where it just keeps raining and raining and raining, and then you need to have the rescue treatment. And so my rescue treatment, and I've been in those situations before, is if you're not able to get all those things in and you kind of got a weedy field, I will row crop cultivate it first, and then I will come back and use that Treffler harrow to pull the weeds out, because I set my cultivator shovels on the 18-20, 4 inches apart. And when you have a shovel, like 4 inches either side of it, what actually happens is it kind of loosens the soil up in between the shovel points. And so even in that row, it's loosened, even though because there's only 2 inches on either side of the plant. And that soil kind of gets loosened. Well, you take this Treffler harrow, and it has these nice little, I'm not very good at switching this, but it has these nice little hooks on it, and you can get different angles on there, and it digs those weeds out that are in loose soil that are right in the row without digging the beans out. So that's my rescue treatment if I get into that situation, is going through a Treffler with a Trefler when we have bigger beans.
Okay, any final questions for Matt? The comment box. Okay, here's another one. Does the Trefler harrow destroy bean plants? If so, what's your rate of cultivator blight? I think, or harrow blight, I guess in this case. So, what percentage of the plants do you think it takes out?
Not very many. I plant at 170,000 is what I plant at for a couple different reasons, which is way plenty. And it doesn't take out very many, not enough to be significant if you have it adjusted right. Now, if you are going too fast, I think you're going to damage your soybeans. But if you remember from that one video, I'm going like 3.5 miles an hour. And I have this big harrow, 60 feet wide, so I can still do, I can't remember, I think it was like 25 acres an hour is what it said it was doing. And so that's a lot of acres at a slow speed, because I'm watching to make sure that I'm not damaging those soybeans. So I don't really see anything. I mean, you can look at the, we can take a look quick here at the, right, there is some, that one is cultivator blight, okay? There's a row that I got out of that. But if you look at the stand here, you know, there's, I'd say there maybe should have been a bean right there, but there's kind of a pile of them. So maybe the planter piled all those up and left a gap there. And so I just don't see gaps from the harrow.
Yeah, I'll say, Matt, that field looks really good, nice and clean, and despite maybe the drift damage there on the beans, they look pretty healthy and thick.
Yeah, I suppose since I planted them early, they used dicamba on the cornfields that are around here, and I'm guessing it is that. I've noticed this before. I thought they'd come out of it a little quicker but they're not. So anyway, they must have got a good dose of the stuff. I don't like that. So I guess it's going to be illegal for next year.
All right, Matt. Well, there's no more questions in the chat box. I wonder if you have any final words of wisdom or parting words you'd like to give for our viewers online this evening.
Well, I guess I hope that I was able to share something that was helpful. And I spent a lot of years doing a lot of organic inspections and getting to know farmers across the state of Iowa. And I really attribute their help in teaching me things along the way and picking up on things and observing what works and what doesn't work. And so I'm hopefully I can help some other people that are trying to learn. There's been a lot of PFI members that have been helpful in passing along that knowledge. And so I just want to thank them because none of us do things on our own. It takes people helping each other out. And so I just thank you for the Iowa Organic Association and the PFI organization.
Well, great. Thanks, Matt. And we are at time at 8:30. I'd like to thank all of our viewers on Facebook Live. Appreciate you all tuning in this evening, and appreciate our partner, Iowa Organic Association, helping us put on this virtual field day. And Matt, thank you so much for recording the videos and having us virtually out to your farm this evening.
Thanks, Stefan.
Great. All right. Good night. Good evening, everybody. Cheers.